The first explosion Anna heard didn't sound real. It was distant, muffled like thunder groaning behind the mountains. But thunder didn't come with the smell of smoke, nor did it make the birds rise in frantic swarms from the trees. Anna froze in the middle of the street, her basket slipping from her hand as the world around her stopped mid-step. A man turned toward the horizon, shading his eyes. A mother clutched her child's shoulders, her face a mask of sudden fear. Somewhere nearby, a dog started barking, a panicked, incessant sound that cut through the sudden silence. Then came the second explosion, closer, louder. It was a violent tearing sound that rattled the windows in their frames. The ground shuddered, and then the screams began. Without thinking, Anna ran. She didn't know where she was going, just away. Away from the noise, away from the trembling ground, away from the dark plume of smoke rising in the distance. Chaos erupted around her, unfolding like a nightmare you can't wake from. People spilled out of shops, tripping over each other in their haste. A cart overturned, spilling apples and potatoes across the cobblestones, a splash of color in the growing panic. Horses reared in their harnesses, their eyes wide with terror. "Bombers!" Someone yelled, the words swallowed by the din. "They're bombing the rail line." The rail line. That was only 2 kilometers from here. A cold realization struck Anna like a slap. That was where so many families from her town worked. It was where trains brought vital supplies. And where soldiers traveled to and from the front. A wave of people surged past her, a human tide of fear. One woman, her face streaked with dirt, grabbed Anna's arm without slowing down. "Run, girl, run." Anna stumbled, but forced herself to keep moving, her feet finding a rhythm on the uneven stones. Her lungs burned as she sprinted through the narrow alleyways, the deafening roar of aircraft engines growing louder, seemingly right on top of her. The very sky seemed to vibrate with their power. Ominous shadows swept over the ground as dark shapes passed above, dropping what looked like metallic specks. They shimmered in the sunlight for just a fraction of a second before plunging toward the earth. A heartbeat later, a blast split the air. A wave of heat brushed Anna's back as she threw herself behind a low stone wall. Dust and debris rained down from the rooftops. Somewhere close, glass shattered with a violent crash. She covered her head with her hands, curling into a ball, and whispered to no one, "Please, please, let this stop." But she already knew. War had no mercy. It had come for her country, for her town, for her life, whether she was ready or not. Thousands of kilometers away, in a quiet Austrian village, Jakob Steiner heard the news before the bombs fell on his own homeland. A messenger had arrived in their village square at dawn, breathless and pale, holding a slip of paper that made the mayor's face drain of all color the moment he read it. Mobilization, mandatory service for all men 18 and older. Jakob watched as his mother sank onto a nearby bench, her hand trembling as she covered her mouth. His father just stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable, carved from stone. In that moment, Jakob felt the entire world tilt under his feet. It was happening. He had imagined this moment so many times, but imagination always softened the edges, smoothed over the real consequences. The reality of it struck harder, colder than anything he could have ever conjured in his mind. That afternoon, he sat on the porch, sharpening a small knife. It was more to keep his hands busy, to stop them from shaking, than to prepare for anything meaningful. His younger sister Mela sat beside him, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Do you have to go?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jakob swallowed the lump that had formed in his throat. Yes, I do. But what if you don't come back?" The raw fear in her voice cut into him deeper than any blade ever could. He forced a smile, a fragile thing, and lifted her chin gently with his fingers. "I'll come back," he said. "I promise." He knew promises meant little in wartime. But Mela needed hope, even if it was just borrowed from a future that was no longer certain. Their father came out and joined them, settling heavily into the old, creaking porch chair. "When you leave tomorrow," he said, his voice low and serious, "do not let fear make your decisions for you." Jakob looked at him, searching his father's face. "Were you afraid? During your war?" His father's jaw tightened as old memories flickered behind his eyes. "Every day," he admitted quietly, "courage is not the absence of fear, son. It's surviving despite it." Jakob absorbed those words, imprinting them deep inside himself. He knew he would soon find out what fear truly meant. Meanwhile, in Leningrad, the hospital where Elena worked overflowed almost overnight. The city was a fortress bracing for a siege. Trains arrived day and night, bringing an endless stream of wounded soldiers from the border. Refugees, their faces etched with exhaustion and loss, flooded the city streets, carrying what little they could. The streets that once echoed with the lively sounds of markets and children's laughter now echoed with the wail of sirens and the hurried, heavy sound of military boots. Elena tied her apron tighter and rushed between the crowded beds, her voice a steady anchor in the storm of pain and confusion, even when her own hands trembled. "Water, please someone bring water," she'd call out. "Hold this bandage press hard right here. You're going to be all right. Just stay with me." She said those words hundreds of times, a mantra of hope, even when she wasn't sure they were true. One night, desperate for a moment of quiet, she stepped outside to catch her breath. Snow was falling and silent, heavy sheets glowing softly under the dim street lamps. The smell of smoke from nearby fires mixed with the cold air, creating a bittersweet scent that clung to her coat. A young soldier sat on the steps, cradling his arm. His uniform sleeve was torn and bloodstained, and his face was ghostly pale in the dim light. Elena approached him softly. "You should be inside." "It's cold," he just shook his head. "I just needed a moment." She sat down beside him on the cold stone. "What's your name?" "Dmitri," he answered, his voice hollow. "Is that your first battle injury?" He let out a small, empty laugh. "It was my first day at the front." Elena looked at him. Really looked at him. He couldn't have been older than 19. The war was swallowing boys like him before they even had a chance to become men. She placed a gentle hand on his. "You're safe now." His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "For how long?" he asked. She had no answer for him. No one did. And across the channel in England, the air raid sirens began their haunting cry just after midnight. Thomas shot upright in his bed, his heart pounding in his chest. His mother rushed into his room, her face taut with urgency. "Thomas, get your things, quickly!" He stumbled as he pulled on his boots, his hands fumbling as he grabbed the small emergency pack he always kept by his bed. They ran downstairs together as the sky outside pulsed with eerie flashes of light. Explosions thudded in the distance, a deep, menacing drumbeat that seemed to get closer with every passing second. German bombers. Thomas had gone through the drills countless times at school, but the drills were controlled, predictable. This was different. This was real. As they reached the entrance to their small basement shelter, his father appeared in the hallway, already in his uniform, fastening the last button of his coat. "You're going?" Thomas asked, though he already knew the answer. His father was a warden. "I have to." "Go with your mother. Stay safe." Thomas felt a knot twist inside him, a confusing mix of fear, confusion, and a strange swelling pride. His father placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Your time will come, son. And when it does, remember who you are." Thomas just nodded, swallowing hard against the tightness in his throat. He understood. His father disappeared out the door, swallowed by the smoke and the sirens and the night. Thomas sat beside his mother in the cold darkness of the basement, feeling the floor tremble with each distant blast. She held his hand tightly, as though anchoring him to the world that was being torn apart above them. Above them, the war raged on. And in that shaking silence, Thomas realized something with a clarity that chilled him to the bone. There was no turning back. The world had crossed a threshold, and the lives they had all once known were gone forever. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing for more tales from history. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.